Fat Ass 45 and his movement are evil, but the hope peddlers and the chattering class won't say shit about it. Fat Ass 45 speaks during his supposedly Great American Comeback Klan rally at Cecil Airport on September 24th, 2020 in Jacksonville, Florida. Fat Ass 45 continues to campaign against Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden, but most Americans have asked or have heard or asked some version of the following questions during the last 4 years. Will Fat Ass 45's movement ever stop? Answer no, because supposedly they're winning, which they're not. But where are the principled and good Republicans? Why won't they stop Fat Ass 45? Why won't they speak out? There are none left, or at least not enough to make a difference. Don't Fat Ass 45 and the other Republicans have a conscience? They don't. Power and vanquishing the enemy, meaning Democrats, progressives, the Democratic Party in general, and anyone else they do not see as real Americans, is the only goal that matters. Is there no bottom to Fat Ass 45 and the Republican Party's cruelty? No. Cruelty and pain are weapons that advance their agenda. How could this happen in the greatest country on earth? By many measures, America is not the greatest country on earth. The myth of American exceptionalism helped to spawn Fat Ass 45ism. Um, what about the Constitution and the rule of law? Surely the institutions will save us. Such quaint notions do not matter to Fat Ass 45 and the Republican Party in their request for total and unlimited power. Democracy is but a means to an end. America's political and social institutions are brittle. Fat Ass 45 and his movement simply exploited problems that have long been present. Americans, by and large, are good people, but why is this happening? How can they go along with it? Tens of millions of Americans, at least, simply do not care about democracy or the institutions. Approximately only 20% of Americans are strong authoritarians. Like many tens of millions of Americans are white supremacists and racists, meaning Trump supporters. Likewise, tens of millions of Americans support putting non-white immigrants and refugees in Fat Ass 45's concentration camps. There is wide support among this segment of the population for Fat Ass 45 the Republican Party. It is disappointing, but not surprising, that so many Americans still have these questions even at this stage in the age of Fat Ass 45. In some ways, such confusion is understandable. The Fat Ass 45 regime and the right and the Republican media have systematically and successfully attacked reality and truth itself. Many Americans are vulnerable to such a campaign because of a public school system which, for the most part, does not teach critical thinking, responsible citizenship, and civil literacy. Learned helplessness works through a culture of distraction, fear, social atomization, alienation, and loneliness to deter collective action. There is a lack of faith in the country's social and political institutions. In a season of death from a pandemic that has killed over 200,000 people and all but destroyed our economy, many Americans are just struggling to try to survive and exist. In total, the American people know something is very wrong in the age of In total, the American people know something is very wrong in the age of Fat Ass 45, but most Americans are unable to move from anger, despair, and rage to mass collective action. While many Americans feel hopelessly lost in Fat Ass 45 world, political pundits and other members of the chattering class ought to know better and do better in terms of the questions they ask and the answers they offer to the public. It is a self-evident and obvious fact that Fat Ass 45 is a neo-fascist who systematically attacking American who is systematically attacking American democracy and the role of the law and the country's social and political institutions in an effort to stay in power indefinitely. Through its allies, enforcers, sycophants, servants, and camp followers, the Fat Ass 45 regime shows this to be true almost every day. They have made it clear that Fat Ass 45 has no intention of leaving office. They view any election where Fat Ass 45 does not defeat Joe Biden as illegitimate. They are seeking to suppress the votes of black people, younger people, and others who are most likely to support the Democratic Party. They are threatening violence against the Democratic Party, its leaders, and its voters. In fact, physical violence by Fat Ass 45 supporters and other members of the far right is increasing. They view a free press as the enemy of the people and believe that journalists and reporters who dare to tell the truth about Fat Ass 45 and his movement should be targeted with violence, imprisoned, or even worse. With the passing of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Fat Ass 45 regime has become even bolder in its obvious attacks on American democracy and freedom. Fat Ass 45 and his mouthpiece have explicitly said that Ginsburg must be replaced immediately to ensure a right-wing a Republican supermajority on the court, and of course to award Fat Ass 45 the squadency if there are any irregularities on election day. The Fat Ass 45 regime has declared the Democratic governed cities such as um, New York City, Seattle, and Portland, Oregon to be anarchist jurisdictions. The apparent implication is that these cities are potentially subject to invasion by Fat Ass 45 and Fat Fuck Bars, federal police, and militias, and they're treated um and they're treated as enemy territory to be subjugated. Fat Ass 45's allies are reportedly moving forward with the plot to subvert um, the people's will and key battleground states by having Republican donors and legislators disregard the vote and appoint electors loyal to Fat Ass 45. Writing at the Atlantic, Barton Gellman outlines the scheme. According to sources in the Republican Party at the state and national levels, the Fat Ass 45 campaign is discussing contingency plans to bypass election results and appoint loyal electors in battleground states where Republicans hold the legislative majority, with the justification based on claims of rampant fraud. Fat Ass 45 would ask state legislators to set aside the popular vote and exercise their power to choose a slate of electors directly. The longer Fat Ass 45 succeeds in keeping the vote count in doubt, the more pressure legislators will feel to act before the safe harbor deadline expires. Such a move would almost certainly end up with the Supreme Court or the House of Representatives deciding the election in Fat Ass 45's favor, no matter how many votes were cast for Joe Biden and the Democrats. Attorney General Fat Fuck Bar and other people close to Fat Ass 45 have suggested that the American people exercise their civil rights by protesting that would be a de facto coup. Then the U.S. military and other forces will be used against under the merely invoked Insurrection Act of 1807. Barr has also threatened to charge protest. Fat Fuck Barr has also threatened to charge protesters with sedition, which is defined as the act of inciting revolt or violence against a lawful authority with the goal of destroying it or overthrowing it, which is not what they were doing. And on Wednesday, Fat Ass 45 again told reporters that he would not commit to a peaceful transfer of power if he is defeated on election day. He said, "We're going to have to see what happens. Get rid of the ballots. There won't be a transfer. There'll be a continuation." Instead of speaking in clear, declarative statements about the Fat Ass 45 regime and American fascism, too many members of the Fourth Estate and other public voices continue to ask questions to which they should know the answers. The worst offenders can be put into three categories. The hope-peddlers will always find some way to spin harsh realities into a potential victory or a hopeful possibility for the Democratic Party and the American people. They also believe that somehow the better angels will take over the Republican Party, thus saving the country, which won't happen. The stenographers of current events are supposedly committed to balance and fairness. They are also the purveyors of both sidesism and horse race journalism. As a group, the stenographers of current events are perhaps most responsible for normalizing the Fat Ass 45 and American fascism. Those are who are stuck in an endless cycle of perpetual outrage, shock, and surprise. These voices act surprised by the Fat Ass 45 regime's newest offense, as though it were somehow unexpected rather than a continuation of an obvious pattern with hundreds of prior examples. Why do the hope peddlers, the stenographers, and the shock brigade behave as they do? They are afraid of what is happening to American society and do not know what to do about it. They still maintain a deep belief in American exceptionalism and an inbred faith that it can't happen here. That fascism and authoritarianism are ills that only afflict other countries. They are wedded to the status quo and the role in the American political system as it exists. To question the health of that system and its long-term viability leads to existential questions about one's vocation and other life choices. They are wedded to being part of an elite class. Again, to criticize the system is to criticize one itself and one's role that they play in it. Moreover, to become too much a truth-teller risks exile from a system in which one are deeply invested. They hold on to myths and folk wisdom about American democracy and a responsible and informed citizenry and the collective wisdom and virtue of the American people. To admit that America has fully become a pathocracy and a cacistocracy under Fat Ass 45 will lead to profound cognitive dissonance. They exist in their own political reality online and elsewhere, one in which they largely communicate with people of their same social and political class who share the same similar values and beliefs. Perhaps the greatest failing of the hope peddlers, the stenographers, and the shock brigade is a deep reluctance, outright refusal to use clear, moral language to describe the current state of politics in America. Fat Ass 45 is evil, his movement is, and what it represents are also evil. Fat Ass 45 has shown himself to be an evil in many ways and on numerous occasions. Most notably, he admitted earlier this year to journalist Bob Woodward that he knew the coronavirus pandemic would likely kill kill hundreds of thousands of people in the United States. Instead of taking appropriate action to stop such a tragedy, the fat ass chose instead to lie about the pandemic publicly and persistently and to encourage behavior that would actually cause death for his perceived personal and political gain. The philosopher Susan Neiman, one of the world's leading experts on evil, said this about Fat Ass 45 in a conversation with Salam last year. Fat Ass 45 meets every single criterion for using the word evil, and he keeps meeting it every day. Evil is a word that should be used with caution. I believe that many people, particularly a certain type of Democratic centrists, were put off by the way in which George W. Bush was described as being evil. I also argue that Bush is evil, and I explored that in the book Moral Clarity. Unfortunately, the description of evil has been so overused that many people just believe that it's a type of name, and I disagree. When we relinquish the use of language like evil, we are leaving the strongest linguistic weapons that we have in the hands of the people who are least equipped to use them, but I do understand the caution and anxiety about using that language, given the way that Fat Ass 45 and his inbred supporters and the broader Republican movement in America works. I am I am unsure if describing Fat Ass 45 as being evil would actually bring any clarity to the conversation. That does not mean that accurate language for describing Fat Ass 45 and what he represents should be avoided. In a recent mail, Neiman offered this further warning. If any moral judgment commands agreement today, it's the claim that Auschwitz, the Nazi concentration camp that has become short-handed for the mass murder of men, women, and children because of their ethnic heritage, was evil. But fascism didn't begin with Auschwitz. It began with a series of attacks on the rule of law in the media that tested the German public's readiness to accept them. Anyone who has followed the news over the past several years has seen how Fat Ass 45 and his enablers have increasingly tested our capacity for outrage by undermining one moral principle after the next. Their determination to fill Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat is the latest example. Should they succeed and win a second term by whatever means, there will be little to reign in a full-fledged fascism, and Americans who are now contemplating moving abroad should know that what happens in the U.S. affects the whole world, and there will be few places to escape Fat Ass 45's influence. Most members of the mainstream American media and other political observers will not publicly state that Fat Ass 45 and his movement are evil, because then that demands that they do something about it. One important function of this inability to see American fascism in its proper historical and global context as both a moral and political crisis is that it is often discussed as something that is coming or on the horizon or imminent, instead of something that is already here. Americans who think the coming election is their last chance to save the republic from authoritarianism. Americans until recently, like me, are almost certainly wrong. Authoritarianism is already here, and what Americans will decide in November is whether it will grow more deeply entrenched. According to a new report, the U.S. is undergoing the substantial autocratization, so much so that only 1 in 5 similarly damaged democracies has been able to reverse such a decline, basically. Fat Ass 45's administration is consuming democratic capacity at about the same pace that the same pace that the wildfire has been destroying the West. The White House has been a source of lies since Fat Ass 45's squadroncy began. Since his impeachment and acquittal by the Senate Republicans, his transgressions have grown more aggressive while being more aggressively supported by the Departments of Justice and Homeland Security, and together the equivalent of a mighty security ministry, both of which are controlled by men who share Fat Ass 45's disregard for the rule of the law. The threat perception this time is not a political luxury. It's an ideological triumph afforded by a functioning democratic system. The threat is now firmly lodged inside the fortress of American power. Regardless of what happens on election day in November, fat ass 45ism and his inbred followers will still be with us with us, and will continue to advance a neo-fascist agenda in this country. In the near future and well beyond that, historians and other researchers will ask members of the fourth estate and the American political system many questions to which we do not have complete answers. Do you understand what Fat Ass 45 represented? Why did you not sound the alarm and tell the truth much earlier? Was it willful ignorance, terror, fear, or something else? Do you really believe that such choices would save you? When you finally understood that your choices would not save you from the forces of fat ass 45ism, what did you do? The hope peddlers, stenographers, and those in the hamster wheel of surprise and shock, as well as others of their ilk, should start working on their answers now. So if you liked the video, give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, Rambin Mike, and also hit the notification bell so that you'll be notified when a new video comes out, and thanks for listening.